Hi there, I'm Vila Lucas.
And I'm Vanessa Nova, and welcome back to the Cosmic Conduit podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sagittarius. But before we dive in, for anyone listening, let's dive into a little bit about what we do here in the Cosmic Conduit, our community, our podcast, and what is the whole purpose of this work.
So much here, Vanessa, so much here. So I absolutely feel like it's such an incredible privilege to come to what this work is about, because we're looking at the cosmic conduit, ourselves as this expression of these higher level of intelligences that exist all around us that help make up the reality that we live in. And our multidimensional reality, right? We're not just living in one plane, one dimension. We are multidimensional beings. And that gets expressed all the time through the magic of archetypes. So we're looking at the framework specifically of using the zodiacal wheel to help us have an approach to what it means to work with archetypes, to make our lives easier, to create the bliss that we want to have happening, to express that flow of the truth of who we are in every moment of every day. Kind of lofty.
Absolutely.
That was a little lofty.
Well, lofty is one of our keywords for Sagittarius. Yes, and just to add on to what you were saying, one of the analogies that I love to use when it comes to this work with the archetypal magic is that, as we're moving through all of these 12 archetypes, we have an opportunity to really anchor and to look at a specific color in a palette of colors. And if you have a broad palette to use, and you know how to use those colors, then you can become an artist at creating your life and master creating your life with intention. And that's really what we're being called to do. We're being called to be the architects, the artists of our lives, and to also raise ourselves to the next vibration, the next octave of what we can do and what we're here to do and serve in the new paradigm. And that's really what this is all about.
Yes, it's really one of my favorite analogies ever, because, as the artist with the palette, because, if you only have what you think about in your astrological chart, okay, so I've got, red and then a little bit of green and then maybe some orange. Those are my three primary colors that are the, maybe correspond to the major signs, my sun sign, my moon sign, and my rising sign. That tends to be what people think about when they think about, oh, who am I according to the zodiacal energies, according to astrology. And that's really just not accurate, because yes, those may be kind of core energies that help shape you, but the reality is you have every color on the palette available to you. And then at different times, at different seasons, at different moments in the cycle of the year, at different moments in the cycle of the moon, there's going to be influences with those different archetypal energies coming in. So today we're working with Sagittarius. So of course, at this time of year with Sagittarius in the air, we're moving towards the winter solstice. We're coming into the darkest time of year, which is kind of a fascinating time to have this fire energy. But that doesn't mean that's the only time we can access Sagittarius, or only if you have in your chart, that's the only time you can draw upon that energy. The whole point of becoming masterful at this palette, this archetypal magic palette, is to be able to draw that energy in whenever you need it for the purpose of specifically what Sagittarius brings.
Yes, I love the way you illustrated that. So, it's like this time of going into the darkness. What can we get from Sagittarius? What does Sagittarius want to bring to us? And what are we looking at here with that archetype?
Well, yeah, it's kind of fascinating. I really love it. It feels brilliant somehow, like ding, 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 the universe is brilliant. Newsflash. But we're coming into the darkest time of the year, right? With the winter solstice. So where it's the very shortest day and the very longest night. And it's going to be dark for a while, right? And so to have Sagittarius, which is very, very intense fire energy. So it's the centaur, right? So the horse body with the human head, and it's the archer. So he's got his bow and arrow, and he's shooting the arrows to hit the target. And so there's a lot of momentum here. There's a lot of passion here. There's a lot of, hitting the mark, getting things done for a greater purpose.
Yes. So the planet is Jupiter, right? That rules Sagittarius. So we're looking at this planet of expansion and growth and bigness. And so that's where, you know, Sagittarius comes in. Like, we can really have the opportunity to see an expansive, big picture impact, vision, and, you know, with that archer energy of like looking at the target, like, where do we want to aim? And at these bigger, higher, loftier philosophical ideas and values, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the ways that, you know, I find it's helpful for me in understanding what it, you know, what are these archetypes really bringing is, as we're looking at the three different fire signs. So we have Aries, which is the first expression of fire. We have Leo is the second expression of fire. And then Sagittarius is the third expression. And with each of these, they kind of grow in their, or they shift in their focal points. So Aries is very much the will and just, you know, this is what I'm going to do. It's me and my choices and what I have happening, you know. And then Leo is more about the expression of, you know, who I am in the world and what I'm here to bring, my brilliance, right? And then Sagittarius is like taking that to the next level, expanding it further, looking beyond just the self into what are the bigger goals, what's the greater aim for the whole. And so there's an interesting dynamic there, because of course it is still a personal sign, but then it has this more planetary or bigger picture aspect to it. So, you know, from kind of going back to what we were talking about with this time of year, you know, Sagittarius would then, you know, it's leadership energy too, right? So leading the way towards like, we need to prepare, we need to have things ready, we need to take the, you know, the energy and the momentum and make sure what needs to be handled is handled, for that greater good, for the greater purpose of, you know, doing what's necessary to carry us through the deep dark of winter.
Right. Yeah, you can also go back and listen to our Gemini Sagittarius axis episode where we talk a little bit about the other side of that. And, you know, there's, with the Gemini and the Sagittarius, there's a bit of like this, you know, learning. So there is a bit of the mind, you know. Gemini is more like about learning little details and lots of gathering information, whereas Sagittarius is like about like always learning, always growing, always like finding the wisdom, and it is like this on this grander scale. And so that's another piece that I see is like, you know, it's the sign of like learning, and want to keep like the academics, like the professor or the storytelling.
Yeah, and just for anyone who may be new here, so what Vanessa was just referring to is that axis is, so as we go through the wheel of the zodiac, we're looking at these cross points, right? So where do the signs have a counterpart energy to them? And so Sagittarius we have is the archer, it's here, and its counterpart there is Gemini. And so Gemini is the twins, and it's an air sign. And so Sagittarius is the archer, and it's a fire sign. So you have, and they're both mutable energies, which means there's a lot of movement going on. And so, as Vanessa was just saying, the Gemini energy is going to be very more in the moment, kind of present to what's happening right here. Whereas the movement and the consideration that and the inspiration that comes with Sagittarius is going to be, you know, on that bigger playing field. You know, when you think about the centaur, it's not a stationary being, right? Like, that's a being that can cover really, you know, extensive lengths in a short period of time, right? The human horse, just boom, movement, and then shooting, you know, the arrows as we go. So where do you have Sagittarius in your life? Where do you come across that, Vanessa?
I mean, I don't have any personally in my closer planets. So I've actually really encountered it more like in friendships and in clients and students that I've had. And yeah, I mean, I noticed that there is, yes, this passion for learning and this higher, you know, wanting to make an impact and higher ideals, and like sort of like these philosophical lofty ideas concepts that,
Right.
okay, like I have this idea, and also there is a tendency to kind of be just, I don't know if scattered is the right word, but it's just kind of like hard to pin down. Like it's like, oh, the next thing, oh, but there's this, like a shiny object syndrome in a way,
Yeah.
like, oh, but there's this thing, like this is so important right now, and like, oh wait, but that's not important anymore, now this is important. So there's a sort of like, non-committal kind of pattern that happens as well.
Yeah. So in this, section and in the conversation, what we like to do is look a little bit at what is the shadow expression of this archetype, because part of what we're doing with this cosmic conduit conversation is looking at taking these archetypes and finding the most, so that yes, it's the highest arc of that expression, but it's also kind of the most current, like what's coming in with the new paradigm, because it's time for humanity to shift into a whole different way of operating. So we're looking at what is this Sagittarian energy that we can really extract to its highest expression to really support us with what this archetype is about. So here we're going to dig in a little bit more to the shadow side of Sagittarius, looking at where when that energy comes through, it can kind of get distorted, or it may not be helpful, or it gets us into trouble. And then seeing where, as we come to this new paradigm expression of what we have with Sagittarius, which is specifically here about enlightened expansion, then how that can really counteract some of these challenge points. So you were talking about that challenge point of it being a little scattered or maybe ungrounded.
What about you? Where do you see this in your life?
Okay, so I do have Sagittarius in my in my big three. My Sagittarius, my moon actually is a Sag moon, and I have a lot of Sagittarians around me. It tends to be, I think Sagittarians, we really enjoy each other. So it is an energy I am quite familiar with, and definitely I'm somebody who's motivated by the philosophical side of things. Deep conversations, I like to get into them. I want to make sure people know and understand things. And with that, there's a deep love for wisdom with Sagittarius, which is lovely. And sometimes that shadow aspect can end up being a little bit overly, maybe preachy is a way of saying it, like kind of beating people over the heads a bit with like, you should see the value of this. Brr, brr, brr. I have this higher wisdom and you need to understand it. So I definitely have fallen into that at various times in my life. People who've been to classes with me, especially in Empower Thyself, the initiation program we do with the Modern Mystery School, I kind of tell the story of, my early days in my 20s of being, what I thought was the spiritual teacher I was going to become. And, it turned into generally an ego fest. I was just like beating people over the head with like, here's truth and you need to accept it. And that's all there is. And if you don't understand, you're stupid. And
yeah,
so wasn't very pretty.
Yeah, so it sounds like there could be some like, self-righteousness and standing on your soapbox, and yeah.
For sure. And kind of like the philosophy for the sake of philosophy, or even to a certain degree, like a savior complex. Like it's up to me to show people what they don't understand to be true, and ignoring a lot of the things that are closer in. So the focus is out here and ignoring all the stuff that's a little bit closer and therefore sometimes more pertinent or more relevant. And so it's sort of a understanding of the priorities, similar to what we were talking about with Gemini, where there's the misunderstanding of the priorities because it's too close in. Here we have it, Sagittarius is too far out.
Right. And not taking it into account and not being grounded with what's really important, practical, or helpful. So like I have a great example of that because I see this a lot where, there's like we get so into like this cause, like there can be like a activism or fanaticism, like there's this cause that's so important. And I see this where with charity work, like people are so wanting, and I mean, it's the intentions are great. Like you want to make an impact, you want to help, you want to be of service. And so where am I going to focus my attention? So, I see it where somebody will be like, okay, I have all this money, I want to do charity work. And they're like, okay, let's go make a school in Nepal, and they're not really paying attention to one, even like their own, community, their own world, and realizing like, okay, like you're shooting the aim, but you're aiming at a target, but is that really helpful? Like, I'm sure it's helpful, but are the priorities stacked in the right way?
Exactly. Yeah, it sort of becomes like target practice just for the sake of target practice. We're just going to, oh, look, I hit a bunch of bullseyes. Okay, great. Well, what does that translate into? It's kind of a misuse of the passion and the inspiration. Like it's misapplied because it's not grounded in something that's current and relevant. And so it's a great use of passion and that adventurous spirit and wanting to really make a difference, like you were saying, that cause oriented, but sometimes the cause is just straight up misplaced and therefore not helpful.
Yeah. So what else? Is there anything else that we want to bring up about places where this can get misaligned?
I think from a place of service, because Sagittarius is a very service oriented sign, right? Being that higher arc of fire, and fire being the spirit and the passion, the energy of passion and in making things happen. So there is this, most Sagittarians really do have a desire to do something, make a difference, make an impact in the world, right? And so I think sometimes with that savior complex or that misapplication of where those targets land, like where they exist, right? That sometimes what can happen is there's like, you miss, as I was talking about, you miss the things that are closer in, but you kind of miss the personal connection side of it. And so, like when you think about teachers or, college professors or, where they're just so wrapped up in, in the significance of the learning and the wisdom that they're putting across, but then kind of have no skill in actually connecting to people, like don't even know how to talk, have like a regular conversation, because it's just, the emphasis is so far out into, the realm of the ideals and the ideas. And so I think as a healer, it's really important, even, and as teachers too, right? For both of us with this Sagittarius energy, to be able to kind of counterbalance, the fire and air of the Gemini and Sagittarius with the water and the earth, right? Which is where we have the mix of all four elements, which give us true balance and that capacity to really connect more specifically. And, sometimes I run into this. So my daughter is also a Sagittarius. And so, as her Sagittarius, and I think she's a double Sag. So she's got I think she has a Sag sun and a Sag moon. So we tend to get into these really exciting philosophical conversations, but we sort of miss the personal side of it. And how are you? And how do, where can we connect emotionally? Where can we connect from a heart space? Because we're just so in the realm of, this sort of lofty philosophical side.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that we said in our previous discussions about Sagittarius and Gemini and that whole axis as well is what is the point? And are all of your points being covered, so that we're really taking advantage of this power that Sagittarius can bring, the luckiness,
Yes.
because it is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is a planet of luck, a planet of money and expansion and growth, right? So how can we take advantage of that power? And also, I think that Sagittarius can have a precision, right?
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
yes.
that's where we get into trouble and too much of the shadow with Sagittarius, is that when that precision isn't being harnessed and that power is there, so you're hitting all these targets and they're the wrong targets with all this power. So, I mean, kind of that leads us into our, pillar that we want to anchor for Sagittarius, which is enlightened expansion. So, what does that look like when we can expand in this way,
Yeah.
Vila?
So Sagittarius just inherently is expansive, right? So like we already were talking about that. Even, when you do this motion, right, of the pulling back of the arrow, it's an expanding, using your energy to pull back in order to like create momentum. And so
Mm-hmm.
inherent in the archer is expansion. And then inherent in the centaur itself, right? The movement, like I was saying, big movement over even, oftentimes a short period of time, a lot of opportunity to move quickly. Sagittarius is known to be a very lucky sign, like you were saying, and just, kind of go with the flow, being in that adventurous way and tapping into that greater flow of like the energy of Jupiter, of that like benevolent coming together of all things. So Sagittarius is inherently connected into that bigger picture flow. And so that expansive side of it, is exciting and fun. So then what we're working with then is to really highlight the enlightened side of it. So all those places where you were just referring to where the shadow can kind of, miss the mark, either miss the mark or just, the wrong targets, or just overly focused on hitting targets. Like we need to just hit all these targets and forgetting, that we want to work with the energy in a way that has a deeper alignment to it. So kind of taking that connection point and deepening it so that the expansion is connected in. You often hear me refer to this analogy, and I'll use it again because it works so well here, is the tree, right? So it's like when the roots of the tree are really, really find their anchor points, then the branches can reach out and have a much more balanced and effective reach. And the flow coming through the tree is that much, continuous and easy, right? So with Sagittarius, it's like the far reach of the expansion energy, when the roots are aligned, when the tree has what it needs, when everything's interconnected in that way, then that target practice, we don't have to worry about, oh, are these the right targets? They're all in alignment because of that enlightened expansion.
Right. And I really like that the word and alignment as a key moving forward for every single one of these archetypes. And as we explore what is the correct and highest expression that we can embody with Sagittarius, with Cancer, with Gemini, with every single one of them, we're asking the question, what does this archetype give us? Like, how can we express this? What does it look like if we didn't have the negative ego? If we didn't have subconscious programming, like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do all these things and have all these targets and have all these blind spots because I'm coming from the wrong place. I'm coming from a place of like, I have something to prove, or I'm coming from a place of, I'm just doing it because I'm distracting myself, right? If we come from a place where we're connected with what is the work at hand, what needs to be done, where do we need to go, and then you pull the target, you pull back the bow and you strike the target with all of that power, how much explosive good can we have in the world? And with each one of these archetypes, that's where I get really excited, is can we see what this looks like if we're not misguided, if we're not coming from a shadow place, we're coming from a place that is awake, aware, and aligned.
Absolutely. I love it. And, and then the other thing that's super cool here with Sagittarius is that it really takes us into a true multi-dimensional expression of self. Sagittarius is not a creature of earth, right? The centaur is a mythical being. It exists sort of beyond, human expression. And so, and I love, that oftentimes we see characters like in the Harry Potter films, the centaur there is Firenze, and he's, always talking about the stars, right? And like, where the consciousness of this being is just literally speaking the language of the stars, speaking the language of the constellation. And when you think about what the constellations are about, it's that interconnectedness of the various pieces. And so it's like every single one of us has our own constellation, our own combination of how we express ourselves multidimensionally. It's not just, okay, I'm Vila, I'm one person, I do this one thing, that's it. It's like, no, there's all of these different expressions and aspects of who I am. And that enlightened expansion of Sagittarius sort of gives us a way to tap in to all of those pieces simultaneously because of that great expansive visionary aspect. And so then that target becomes hitting that constellation as a whole, right? And then like every single one of those, points goes off simultaneously. And actually that image reminds me of it's the character, Guardians of the Galaxy, the character that has the Yondu with the arrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
He like hits the arrow. Of course, he whistles his way through it, but the arrow hits all the different points, and it hits it every time. It's like that's the expanded enlightenment of the enlightened expansion of Sagittarius, is that it hits all of those and lights the whole thing up simultaneously, which is that multidimensional expression of who we really are.
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited, and I'm glad that you brought up that image of that character in Guardians of the Galaxy, because we're really being called to step into our multidimensional expression and into this being, and that's not linear. So like, all of this, it's like we're being called to step out of the box of like your astrology chart, your identity. And so the only way we can really do that is to like have these reference points. And this is a way to do that. We can really like pull the bow back, and it's not just a linear path, but we are going to hit and awaken and activate all of these different aspects of ourselves. So that's super exciting.
Yeah. And, in the way that we're going to do it. So yes, we're going to do it by considering these things and contemplating, and that, philosophical aspect that Sagittarius brings, or the conceptual aspect of the learning or the wisdom. But even more so, we're going to do it by embodying it, and so that's really the thrust, on the belly side of what this cosmic conduit work is about, because it's when you're living it that these archetypes can really be anchored in your life, and you master it at a whole other level. And so that's where our monthly new moon ceremonies come in. That's where we're doing the work of actually taking you through a process to embody this energy. So what is enlightened expansion like for you in your life? We're going to take you there in a self ceremony, with the new moon as it comes around in a couple of weeks. So when you have that experience, it gives you a new imprint, a new pattern to start to live and practice every day. Because it's not just we do it once and it's done, right? It's something that to continue to replicate in a whole new way.
And we're tapping in to the power of community as we're all, moving through and overcoming, transforming whatever shadows are coming up. And really, like you said, setting a new template so that we can express these higher aspects. And we're doing it in like a very practical way. We're working with earth and water and air and fire. And so that you have that tangible experience in the ceremonies. And then the other way that you can work with us, that we also, we have so many transformational, powerful tools that come from our ancient, thousands of years old lineage in Magick. We want to share this magic with you. So we have immersion programs that are coming up. So please do check that out. We can spend really intensive, immersive time with us where you'll be learning meditation techniques, learning techniques to protect your energy, learning how to, expand your consciousness to move through different dimensions. Like that's the good stuff right there.
Yeah. And, you know, so if as you're listening to us, you kind of hear some of these expressions going like, wow, that feels kind of a little bit out of reach for me or what I've got going on. It sounds great, but like, how do I get from here to there? That's exactly what the immersion programs are for. And so, yeah, you come and you spend 5 days with us, you spend 7 days with us, and we take you through a whole set of literally, you know, activations, initiations, shifts in your personal energy structure, using ancient spiritual technology that has been around for this exact purpose, to help humans up level so we can live from this aligned, centered, grounded, connected place, to have that higher expression of who we are, and living from that in every single moment of every day.
100%. Yes. And that's what we're here to do, and it's what we're passionate about. So if that interests you in any way, just stay tuned for the rest of the details on this episode.
Yeah. So in the meantime, there's links here. You can join our online community. So we're meeting up live on a regular basis for the ceremonies and for check-ins and working with the cycles of the moon and the zodiacal wheel. We're here on our Cosmic Conduit podcast right on a regular basis. So stay tuned for more episodes, but come be part of our community, because this is where we're going to hold each other. We're going to hold the container for this transformation, and we're going to birth it together.
Well, hope you'll join us. And thanks for listening.